Today, I'm going to talk about 5 things that you need to know in order to make it safe to do your grief work. The goal of grief work is not to throw yourself into a free fall, and knowledge of these 5 elements will give you a fighting chance to support your relationship with your grief. I'm Jo McRogers, and welcome to Grief Support That Works. I'm a therapist dedicated to doing grief differently. Please let YouTube know the important work that we are doing here by liking, subscribing, turning on the notifications bell, and sharing any videos that you think someone else might benefit from. I've made a whole playlist of videos called Tools for Grief Counseling. Today, we are going to review 5 things to know. Number 1, physical and emotional regulation. Number 2, social events. Number 3, what grief requires. Number 4, looking for role models. And number 5, the knowledge that relationships will change. So number 1, grief work will challenge you mentally and emotionally, and attempting it will need physical regulation. You will need to find ways to ground yourself, to ground your breath and your mind. Somatic therapy is a type of therapy that helps to treat post-traumatic stress symptoms and effects from other mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression. This type of therapy connects a person's mind and body during the work of grief work, and it's so important to start there. Attempting emotional regulation without knowing how to physically regulate will be fruitless. It can be a disaster. There is a belief that the issues are in the tissues, and unless the tissues can be regulated and soothed, attempting emotional work will only send us deeper into trauma. And this can lead us to doubt or fear doing our grief work. So this could look like breath work or yoga, all kinds of different movements. You need adequate sleep, some nutrition, some hydration are all vital in physically regulating. So knowing what works for you is an essential component in your grief work. I'm currently completing some more training in somatic therapy in order to offer different options to my clients. And so if you want to learn about how to support yourself to physically regulate, just Google somatic therapy and you will find all kinds of suggestions. So please experiment and find what appeals to you, practice it, and know what works for you. Please let me know and share with anybody else who's viewing if you found it difficult to physically regulate while you were doing emotional work. It makes sense in my mind, and I've seen how it has supported or impaired people's attempts to have a relationship with your grief. So please, in the comments below, let us know, how did you physically ground in order to do the emotional work? And number 2, attending social events is so challenging when we are grieving. Many times we attend social events because we feel obligated, because we don't want to appear weak. We might attend because we believe that keeping busy seems to be a highly praised goal. However, my suggestion to grievers is that if you and your grief are not welcomed at this event, then this is not a place where you belong. You need to know where your grief is safe. Who or what is asking you to pretend or deny your grief? Or who or where is respecting your grief? Please choose wisely. Number 3, perspective is so critical. There are 3 filters that I'm going to ask you to be aware of. And the first is grief. This is largely about the logistics of our loss. The second then is our experience of that loss, because my grief is going to be unique from your grief. It's going to be based on my experiences, my beliefs, and my relationships. The third filter to be aware of is curiosity. And I know that this is a really big ask of grievers, but we all need some moments of being able to ask, what do I need? What supports me in this moment? Please be curious about what serves you. Is it stillness, activity, engagement, creativity, expression, noise, or quiet? Please find a way to bring your curiosity to your grief. I do respect that this is a massive ask, but this will help to insert a little bit of space between you and your grief so that you can enter into your grief work safely. And the fourth consideration is to seek role models. Again, this is another big ask, but grief itself is a big ask. So I believe that you can't envision what you haven't seen role modeled when we're grieving. So while your own grief is so unique, it's also important to witness how others are doing their grief, because this helps to normalize the challenges, the defeats, and the small but mighty celebrations in grief work. I don't want you to confuse this with comparisons in grief, though, because I often see that happen. Clients will often say to me, well, their grief is worse than mine, so I really shouldn't feel this bad. But this is viewing someone else's grief in order to diminish our own grief, and that's a trap. This is our brain trying to protect us. But grief doesn't benefit from comparison. There's no room for comparison in grief. Comparison brings judgment and division in our grief, and it can feel like grief becomes a bit of a pissing match. Please seek role models and normalizing of grief work. Find a place that offers role modeling in the positive action of stepping into a relationship with your grief. And the final filter is the knowledge that relationships will change. I want you to know that this is a normal happening. It is a byproduct of grief. It is a normal, frequent expectation that those who love and know us best will also be our best support. But please know that this is often not what happens. Those who know and love us best will want our pain to end. They may not hold space for you and your grief to coexist. And this will challenge and change some of your closest relationships, family or friends. As you find a way to integrate your grief, know that you will need to reinvent yourself. Those around you, family, friends, and colleagues, may be hoping for the old you to return. This may not be possible, and relationships will again change. And perhaps the most critical of all is that your relationship with yourself will also be challenged and changed. Your ability to love and trust and take risks, to feel safe and to fully engage in living will change when you're grieving. Doing your grief work with the knowledge that relationships will change helps to make being with your grief more safe. So please anticipate these changes and know that these changes are, again, the natural byproduct of grief. And it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's not because people don't love you or understand you. Grief changes relationships. Part of what gets us into trouble with our grief is trying to just get past it, to get back to normal. Please know that I ask you to first make your grief work safe, and then to find your own unique way to step into your relationship with your grief. I've been witness so many times to individuals who have found their way to live in love with their loss while they return to a full life. So today I've touched on 5 elements that I know of in order to make it safe to step into your grief work. What have I missed? Please share in the comments below so that we can all learn from your wisdom. And it's so important to normalize all that we're experiencing when we're grieving. If you're interested in working together, please find the link below, as I have some new services to support you. And as you find your way with your grief, I send you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Thank you, and take good care.